Hello, fourth grade. How are you? Hopefully you're doing well. Welcome back to class. We are going to look at fractions today. I'm glad that you're here. I hope you had a great break. We were just looking at this concept today in class. The concept that we're going to be learning about is representing fractions as mixed numbers by using the whole and the part. Okay, so we're going to say and we're going to represent those fractions today in class. Before break, we were looking at multiplying numbers, and these numbers were just a little bit larger than what you're used to in third grade and the beginning of fourth grade. So what we're going to do today is represent different fractions. So I'm going to say a fraction, and I'd like you to repeat it. Okay, so we have 1/4. 1/4 is the first fraction that we have right here. 5 3/4. 2 1/3. 7. No, that's not a fraction, it's a whole number, right? 4 1/2. 5. Again, we have a whole number. 1 1/2. 6. 3 1/3. Now, if we take a look at these fractions, these are called mixed fractions. What we do is we have a whole number that's connected to a fraction. Now let's just take a look at some of these, just so that we can understand them a little bit better. I think it's really important that we take a look at the parts and the whole as we look at these fractions, right? So if we take a look at the first one, for example, we have no whole number. We just have a fraction right there. But with these other examples, for example, 1 1/2, 5 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/3, and 3 1/3, we have a whole number that's with a fraction, okay? So these whole numbers right here represent complete numbers, okay? But the numbers that are in blue, for example, 5 3/4, are not whole or complete numbers. This is a part of a number, okay? So we have just a part of a number right here. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at more in depth how to find the mixed numbers, and later on add and subtract and do all sorts of things with them. So let's take a look at this first number. This first example has us looking at a mixed number. You can see that in green we have a whole and we have a part, right? 1 3/4 would be this mixed number represented as part of the fraction, okay? You see the whole and the part represented right there. Here we have another fraction. This is another mixed number. You can see the whole number on the left, the 3, and the fraction on the right, the half. Let's repeat this fraction. It says 3 1/2. Again, 3 1/2. 3 1/2 has a whole number, a numerator, and a denominator. So what would be the numerator in this fraction? You're right, 1. What is the denominator in this fraction? Yes, 2. So what is the whole number represented in this fraction? Good, 3. Let's take a look at another mixed fraction. Can you say this fraction without my help? Good, 2 1/7. The whole number is 2, and the fraction is 1/7. Let's take a look at this problem right here. Which mixed number is shown below? Well, if we take a look at this number, we know that the whole is represented by the complete parts that are filled in. So if we have one complete whole plus another complete whole, that's going to give us 2 wholes. So what's the part that's represented? Well, this part is not shaded in. There's no green right there. There's only 1, 2 green parts. So that's 2 of the total, which is 3 parts. So what do we do if we add this whole and this part? What would our answer be? You're right, 2 and 2/3. Our answer is this one right here, 2 and 2/3. The next problem has us looking at another mixed fraction, but this time it's represented with circles. You can tell that there are 2 wholes and 1 part, which is 1/4. If we look at this, we have 1 whole, another whole, and this part right here. What is that part called? You're right, 1/4. So when we take 2 plus 1/4, we're going to be having our full mixed fraction as 2 and 1/4. Okay, we don't count these parts that are not shaded in pink. Okay, let's go on to the next problem. The next problem has us looking at another mixed fraction. What mixed fraction is this? Pause the video and try this on your own. All right, I know that you know that this is 1 whole right here. So what would this part be right here? Well, since there are 4 parts total, and one of them is shaded in, we have 1/4. So what is 1 plus 1/4? That equals 1 and 1/4. That's your final answer. Good job, boys and girls. Let's continue to the next problem. We can represent fractions as wholes and fraction parts. For example, this would be 3 and 4/7. The total mixed number is represented as 3 wholes, 4/7 is our fraction, and 3 and 4/7 is our mixed fraction. What about this one? How many wholes and fractions do we have represented in pink? Well, if you took a look at it, and you remember the problems from before, we have 1 whole right here, and we have 1, 2 parts that are shaded. So 1 whole plus 2 of the 3 equals 1 and 2/3. 1 and 2/3 is our final mixed fraction. Let's go on to the next problem. This problem has us looking at adding fractions. Now, we're going to be getting into this a little bit later, probably not right now. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to skip to page 48. Okay, we're not going to do page 37. We're not going to do page 38, 39, 40, and 41. Okay, we're going to skip all those problems, just so you know. And we're going to go to page 48. Okay, we'll come back to page 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, and 47 at a later date. Okay, those are just practice problems from the previous units. So let's go to page 48 and do some problems together. What you're going to do is try to represent these fractions as wholes and parts in a mixed fraction form, just like we did before. Let's do the first 2 together. When you look at these problems, again, we have a whole number. So in other words, letter A, we have 3 wholes and 1/2. We can represent that by writing, let me pick a color that actually will show up. We have 3 wholes plus 1/2. We'd write that as 3 and 1/2. Letter B, how many wholes do we have this time? I see 2. So 2 is our whole number. And how many parts do we have? Well, we have 4/5. So 4 of the 5 are shaded. If you take a look at page 48, you'll see that these numbers are represented also in graphic form, just like we saw in our previous examples. Pause the video and try letter C and D. All right, so hopefully you paused the video and you found that letter C and D are very similar. For letter C, we have 2 holes. I'm going to write the answer right over here. 2 holes, and 1/6 is our part. So 1/6. There you go. Be careful that you don't write it like this, because this is a completely different fraction. Okay, we're not going to write it like that. Letter D. We have 3 holes and 7/8 as our part. Remember, your 7/8 are relatively small in comparison to your whole number. 3 and 7/8 is your final answer. Make sure you check your answers on page 48 to make sure that you have these correct. Well, boys and girls, that ends the class for today. Next time, we're going to be going into more depth on adding and subtracting fractions and also simplifying them. So thanks for coming. We'll talk to you guys next class.